Well, welcome everybody. We got a special guest today for you. Michael Dugan's been a trainer for us for a long time. He does all the F&I training. He does some sales training as well, but mainly it's new hire F&I training. He just got back from a 2-week stint in New Jersey and New York, training a bunch of Carbone folks and DCH folks. So he does a great job for us. And if you have any questions at the end of the, or during the presentation, please wait for the microphone to be passed to you. But without further ado, Mr. Michael Dugan.
How many of you would like to be a more effective learner? Show of hands, please. And how many of you would like more vitality in your life? Once again, a show of hands. Thank you very much. You came to the right place. My name is Michael T. Dugan, and I'd like to thank you for your time, and thank you for trusting me with your precious time. 80% of success is what? Who can tell me? Woody Allen said it's showing up. Everybody congratulate the person next to you and say, great job for showing up. Anytime I do any trainings or seminars, I have 2 rules. How many rules?
2.
Thank you. And the first rule is this: don't believe a word I say. Now, why would I say that? Because all that can come from is my experience. It doesn't make it right, it doesn't make it wrong, it doesn't make it true, it doesn't make it false. All I can let you know, however, is all the information and principles you will learn from me have totally transformed my life and now transform the lives of literally thousands and thousands and thousands of other people's lives. And if you learn them, and more importantly, you use them, I absolutely believe they'll make a positive difference in your life too. So all I ask is that you be open. What's the word, everybody? And whatever works for you, keep on doing, and whatever doesn't work for you, throw it away. So how many of you are willing to be open while you're here with me for the next hour? Thank you. Anybody not? We'll see. And then the next rule is this. How many of you notice I ask a lot of questions? Yes? And what do questions do? Anybody?
Engagement.
Absolutely. Questions hook the mind. Say that with me. Questions hook the mind. So questions initiate the conversation in your head. And sometimes I ask you to repeat after me. Now, why in the world would I ask you to repeat after me? Yes, yes, and yes. Thank you. If I say it, it means one thing, but if you say it, it means everything. And this is all accelerated learning from a man named Joseph Lazanoff. So while we're doing a talk on learning to learn, we might as well practice a little accelerated learning while we're here to have that maximum impact. So how many of you are willing to play at 100%? Think about it before you raise your hand while you're here with me. Is everybody willing to play at 100% to the best of their ability? Whoa, we see some hands. And so what I'd like you to do is please high five the person next to you and say, I'm playing at 100% today. Since we're going to spend a little bit of time together, is it okay if I share a little bit about myself? Thank you. And thank you. I started in Alaska, and I was the oldest of 5 kids. And I remember picking up a book when I was young in high school, and that was a natural inclination of me to pick up a book, but it was called Doc Savage. And when I picked up this book on Doc Savage, it was about a superhero. For me, it's kind of like Batman, because he didn't really have superpowers. Bruce Wayne's good looking, he's a billionaire, but as far as up against Superman, I give Superman all day long. So this was Doc Savage. And Doc Savage made a decision when he was young, and the decision was that if I continuously learn and continuously work out, I am going to become an extraordinary human being. In other words, I'm going to be extraordinary. And that resonated with me. And I made a decision as a young man, because sometimes in life, we make power decisions. What kind of decisions, everybody? Power decisions. And these changed our life. And you can look back at your life and see certain power decisions that you make that change, the way I say it, the time and location of your gravestone. You'll live longer as a result of some decisions, and you'll die in different locations as the result of some decisions. and I decided that I'm going to be a nonstop learner. Personal evolution for me is a way of life. And in this personal evolution, it's allowed me to keep an open mind. When I ask you for the open mind at the beginning of the class, this is a prerequisite to learning. There's not a harder person to speak to than the know-it-all, because the know-it-all has a sense of ego and over-identified with their ability to hold knowledge that it can cause them to dismiss knowledge when they listen to it. So one prerequisite of learning is humility. What's the word, everybody? Humility. And always have in the beginner's mind. But we will get into that. And I'm going to share not my whole story like I do oftentimes in classes, but a couple things, key events, with me displaying learning to learn. And when I was 18 years old, my father took me to a motivational speaker named Norman Vincent Peale. And Norman Vincent Peale had written a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. Has anybody heard of this book? Thank you. Great book. And I liked him enough that I went to see him again the next day. And then my father at this time, he was in his 40s, he was going through his own personal transformation, and he was giving it to his kids. And at the time they had these 5-day seminars. One was called EST and one was called Insight. And in these seminars, I'd see a person on stage to be like an electrical engineer, but the electrical engineers on stage, what this showed me through his actions is that he'd rather be a teacher than an electrical engineer. And for me, the seed was planted in the desire to become a professional trainer. When I was in high school playing football, the coach would always lose his temper. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way. And then when I was young, I got in the Plumbers and Pipe Fitters Union in Alaska. And I see these old plumbers and pipe fitters losing their temper. And once again, I thought, there has to be a better way. And I made a decision at 23 years of age to master my emotions. And that was one of those power decisions that changed the time and location of my gravestone. And I thought, do I want my emotions to run me, or do I want to master my emotions? And the absolute definitive decision was to master my emotions. So I started learning and growing, reading emotional awareness books, super learning, understanding why is this machine lose this temper? Why am I over-identified with this habit of anger? Why do I have this ability to feel this fear at this moment? And in learning to master my emotions, what it's done is it's allowed me to have a higher level of self-awareness and self-understanding. And I pretty much felt that I had mastered my emotions until I had a child. And then it was back to the drawing boards, you know, and once again, a sense of humility to keep on going and keep on growing ourselves. And then when I decided to do the Mr. Alaska bodybuilding contest when I was 37 years old. And I've never done a bodybuilding show before that point, but if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it to win it. And when I decided to do it, one success principle in learning to learn is role modeling. And success leaves clues. Say that with me, everybody. Success leaves clues. So somebody's successful, they've already made their life path. Their life path will never be my life path, but their life path will absolutely give me clues to accelerate my path. And I copied the guy that was the best on the planet Earth, a guy named Dorian Yates. And then I learned how to visualize also. And the first time I tried to visualize, I recognized, as I read a book, they said, imagine yourself laying down on the bench press. So I see myself laying down on the bench press, and they said, now pick up the bar and then lower it down to your chest. And I'm doing this in my mind, and then push it up, and I'm doing it in my mind. And I recognize that it's fairly difficult. In other words, it requires effort to visualize. But at that moment, I paid attention to the directions, and I started visualizing my success. And I visualized myself winning the show over and over and over again. And I literally visualized the audience vomiting with disgust. Yes, vomit. Because they'd never seen a human being that lean before. And the first, it's like Grey's Anatomy. And so when I did the show, I won the entire show the first time I did it. I won my weight class in the overall, and I did it without steroids. I did it as a middle-aged man. And I did it because of the level of discipline I had been cultivating in my life through this nonstop learning and this nonstop working out. I went to do the show again the next year. Once you've been crowned the champion, you don't necessarily want to lose it in front of 1,000 people the next year. So what I did is I faced a fear. What did I face, everybody? A fear. And the saying is, if you fear it, then you must. Say that with me, please. If you fear it, then you must. Or another one is feel the fear and do it anyway. Ready? Feel the fear and do it anyway. Thank you. Susan Jeffers, great book. And what I did is I did it because I feared it. And as a result of taking this action, I got to win the show twice, the overall. And I was the first man to ever win the show. I did it as a middle-aged man. And once again, it was because I had this level of discipline. And I started understanding a formula for winning in life, a formula that allows you to become a more valuable human being. The formula of effort, the formula of discipline. And once we find something that works in our life, oftentimes we use it into the next thing. That was the second learning story. Now I want to become a speaker. Is anybody familiar with the organization called Toastmasters? Yes. And I started going to Toastmasters, and like a Boy Scout in Boy Scouts of America, there's the highest level. What's that called? Eagle Scout. There's an Eagle Scout. And Toastmasters has something called a DTM, which is a Distinguished Toastmaster. And I became a Distinguished Toastmaster. So once again, I'm investing in my learning and I'm growing myself. And I was speaking at high schools, junior high schools, elementary schools, colleges, detention centers, prisons, fundraisers for the Sheraton Hotel, for the FHA. So I'm getting my feet wet as far as being up here in front of audiences and speaking to them. And then what I did is I started buying all the books. I started soliloquying Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, Winston Churchill, and started just copying the people that were best, buying the world's greatest speaker, success secrets of the motivational movie stars, and teaching myself how to learn, teaching myself how to grow, teaching myself how to change myself. And this has been a way of life for me. I'm 56 years old now, and I have no desire to stop growing. But I understand the more self-aware I am, and the more I understand myself, the better I'm going to grow. So the desire to master my emotions has not stopped. The desire to understand human communication has not stopped. The desire to become the greatest human being I could possibly be in a world that seems slightly challenged. Does anybody see some challenges out there on the planet right now with a show of hands? Yes. And if I'm an optimist is almost a dirty word on the planet. It's like people will make fun of you, they'll poke at you because they're different. There's a famous parable of a king over a kingdom. And everybody in the kingdom drank the same source of water except for the king. And the water became contaminated and poisoned, and it made everybody in the kingdom go insane, except for the king. Because the king, I'm not saying I'm the king. Okay, I am. The king had his own source of water. So he was the only person that was sane. Because everybody else was insane and he was the only one that was sane, everybody thought that he was insane. In a world of collective negativity, when you go in positive, people are going to perceive you as different. They're going to perceive you as what? Different. And so you want to sometimes go into different environments, stealth. How do you want to go in? Stealth. Grumbling, negative, rah, 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 and all of a sudden you fit in perfectly. Understanding that people are a series of habits. There's a famous saying I teach in almost every class, and I'm going to share it with you right now. It's called, how you do anything is how you do everything. Say that with me, please. How you do anything is how you do everything. And please write that down. How you do anything is how you do everything. The first time I heard this statement, I was at a seminar, and it came from a man named T. Harv Eker in Peak Potentials. And I thought about it, and it threw me into thought, the depth of it. And what it basically is a statement of habit. And the earth turning is a habit. The earth going around the sun is a habit. And people become creatures of habit. So we become so habituated in our behaviors that it makes people very predictable. And you'll see the person that's late here and they go to the next job and they're late. The person that has the great work ethic here and they go to the next job and they have the great work ethic. So what it allowed me to do was introspect and look at myself and understand myself to a higher degree. And allowed me to understand people at a higher degree. It's that empathy and that understanding that you want to master in communication. Have this self-awareness so you understand yourself, and the result of understanding yourself is you understand other people also. So it allows you to connect better as an organization. And when I look at how you do anything is how you do everything, if a person can't keep their collective sense of emotions in a minor situation, is it reasonable for me to expect them to keep collected in a major situation? because how you do anything is how you do everything. And recognize that everything, the way I look at it, is trial for that big moment. When I was young, there was a movie called The Poseidon Adventure, and there's a scene where Gene Hackman, they're walking upside down on the SS Poseidon, so they're upside down on the cat rocks, and there's this valve that's spewing steam, and he has to jump off on it, grab the handle, and his arms are burning, and it's frozen shut from the steam, and he has to shut it. And at that moment, he saved everybody and died. And the way I look at it, that's a hero's death. That's the death that I would like to have as a human being. I don't want to necessarily proclaim it for this moment, but if I'm going to go, that's how I want to go. Where's the wood? But with the hero's death, it's like everything is setting me up for that moment, because that moment will happen. But if I rise or fall at that occasion is a prerequisite is everything I've done up to that moment. And so it makes me look at my life from a different perspective, how I live it. Do I really want to live life? Do I really want to experience life? And as we go through this little time we get to spend together, I hope to share a couple ideas of the absolute importance of investing in yourself. When they give you these little metaphors, there's nothing more important than put your own oxygen mask on first. And then I'll put it on to my kids or I'll put it on my wife. I was on Southwest Airlines the other day and they said that. If your oxygen mask, the oxygen mask goes down, put your own oxygen mask on first. And if you have 3 kids, put it on the smart kid first. I thought that was pretty funny. But ultimately, if I invest in myself nonstop, there's going to be more of me to give to my wife, give to my daughter, give to my coworkers, my associates. But if I don't invest in myself, there's not going to be as much to give. So it causes a sort of selfishness that's unselfish. And learning how in our busy lives to compartmentalize your life and find some place to steal some time so that you can invest in yourself. I talk a lot about awareness. Say that with me, everybody. Awareness. And the more aware you are as a human being, the more you understand. The less aware you are, the less you understand. I was talking to a young man years ago in Spokane, and he said he had this horrible fear of moose. He said he feared moose more than any other animal on the planet. And then I know it's crazy, I'm from Alaska, I see them everywhere. They're like deer here. And so he said he got out of his house, and he was on his cell phone, and he's going like this, and he walked up and he saw a moose right in front of him. And I said, dude, isn't that amazing? I said, you're in your text tunnel. You're in your text tunnel of thought, and you didn't see the mammal that you feared more than any other mammal on the planet Earth. That would be an example of lower level awareness. And sometimes we're so in our heads that our senses are not open to everything around us. We're not paying attention to all the variables because we're too busy thinking about what just happened or too busy thinking about what's going to happen, and that doesn't allow us to be present. It doesn't allow us to be engaged. For me, you have IQ, intelligence quotient, or you have EQ, emotional quotient, and awareness is an entire other type of intelligence. I look at it as more of a social intelligence, so you can fit in not only with the human beings that we are, but you can fit in with everything better as a result of a higher level of awareness. And it's absolutely attainable by anybody. But the first thing you have to do is decide, do you want to be a high level of presence, a high level of mindfulness, and make one of those power decisions to start moving yourself in that direction. And for me, there's certain things that I think have a level of truth. Like I said, stay open and throw it away at the end of class. But one thing for me is change is certain. Say that with me, please. Change is certain. And I would go as far, I do my best to not be like never, always, and put that on somebody, but I'm going to do it in this instance and say everything always changes. And I personally mean that literally. To the biggest galaxies, to the universe is always changing, down to the smallest particle of our existence. Everything is always changing. But what do human beings not like to do? We don't like to change. And there's a great book I read years ago. It was called The Amazement Revolution. And I thought, yeah, tell me what amazes human beings. And this is what they said in the book, Amazes Human Beings. If you can just give human beings consistency. If you can just give them consistency. Because they're so used to not being consistent. That's why when you have a boss that's not good at emotionally regulating themselves and they go into high swings and low swings, we don't have that level of consistency. So it makes life a bit more of a challenge. Change is certain, and then we go to everything always changes. And right now, like it said in the little blurb to come here, my perspective is change is happening at an unprecedented rate on the planet Earth. And right now, they call it the dematerialization of businesses, where everything can go digital. And right now, for me, it makes sense that I want to master change. I want to have the ability to understand how can I be great at change. And basically, the antidote to change is learning to learn. That's the antidote. The better you are at learning, the better you'll do with change. And the less you are at learning, the less you're going to do at change. Awareness is the first key to change. Say that with me, please. Awareness is the first key to change. Oftentimes when I'm with selling, I have a gentleman here right now this week, Ryan. Everybody say hi, Ryan. Hi, Ryan. And he's up here from Monterey, California. And I asked him, Ryan, what's your weakest link in selling? What's your weakest link? And he had to stop and think. I said to him, stop. The fact that you're thinking about it tells me that you're not aware of it. At a minimum, it's not top of your mind awareness. And if you're not aware of what it is, you can't fix it because you don't even know that it exists. What's your weakest link in learning? What's your weakest emotional link? Because until you're aware of it, you don't even know that it exists because it's not in your field of consideration. And having that ability to be introspective and look at ourselves. One of the things I teach in class, one of the most important things you can do is learn how to receive constructive feedback and make it safe to receive constructive feedback, because this allows me to understand how you perceive me. And simply, I teach people simply to say thank you if they give it to you. If they're nice enough to have enough courage to give me their truth, simply say thank you to them. But oftentimes, if you give somebody constructive feedback, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to justify it, make an excuse for it. Another great book was Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me. And what that book is about, how it's very natural for us as human beings to create excuses. And when you learn to receive feedback from people, it allows you to adjust yourself according to the group perception. And one of the sayings is you never want to care what anybody thinks about you, which is a difficult thing to do, but you want to be aware of how they perceive you, which is two different things. Another great book was called No More Mr. Nice Guy. It was about nice guys that finish last. The guys that are always doing everything for everybody else, they're kind of a drain, because they don't feel self-secure enough. But when you have the person that doesn't need you, don't need your validation to exist, that's the person that's not a drain because they're self-secure. Another word for this would be self-esteem. What's the other word, everybody? Self-esteem. And self-esteem is how much you like yourself. And it's so interesting because there's a reflective nature to self-esteem. And the more you like yourself, the more you like other people. The more you like other people, the more they like you. The less you like yourself, the less you like other people. The less you like other people, the less they like you. And unless you're aware of what are the pillars of self-esteem, your hands are tied. You don't even know that they exist, of what the fundamental tenets of feeling better about yourself as a human being is. And while we're going through this class, I intend of sharing a couple of them with you. But awareness is definitely a pillar of self-esteem. You have to have a high level of consciousness. The more aware you are, the better you feel about yourself as a human being. The more into yourself, the more selfishness, so we don't necessarily feel as good about ourselves because we don't understand all the dynamics of everything that's happening. Learning is a skill. Say that with me. Learning is a skill. So what I mean by that is that you can get better at it. Right now, the problem on the planet Earth today is that there's too much information. So we have to source the information, and that goes to the age-old adage, always consider the source, and make sure you're getting the best information you can to help yourself. And with learning being a skill, I'll give you an idea or two in the hour, but it's for you to make the power decision to become a master learner and understand that all the information is out there for you to accelerate your ability to learn. And the more you can learn, the more adaptable you'll do. The better you learn, the better you do with change. It should simply make sense to you. Does that make sense to everybody in the room? Yes, but if you're not aware of what the tenets are, if you're not aware of what's going on in your own physiology and psychology, you're handicapped. You don't have that ability to liberate yourself beyond the bondages of the chains of your own self-limiting beliefs. Why is it important for you to become a learner? Why is it important for your family for you to become a learner? Why is it important? I'd like you to think about that for a moment and write down 3 reasons why it's important for you to become a learner. Thank you for doing that. Now what I would like you to do is I'd like everybody to please find a convenient partner. Everybody please find a convenient partner. If anybody does not have a partner, please stand up.
What did you write?
Does anybody not have a partner? Okay, listen, my friends, please listen. This is called partner share. One of the partners is going to pick the name genius. The other partner is going to pick the name savant. And then genius, so go ahead and pick, get that sorted out. One of you is genius and one of you is savant.
What did you put first?
Okay, pause. I'll give you directions, 1 sec. Okay, everybody, you have that sorted out? And the next thing you're going to do is genius. You're going to share with savant what you wrote down for about 45 seconds. And then savant, you only have one job. What do you think that job is, savant? It's to listen. And then I'll say switch and switch, switch and switch. And then it's savant's turn to share. And genius, what's going to be your job to do? Listen. Now this is accelerated learning. This allows you to keep ideas. I'm priming you right now, so there's a lot going on with this type of situation. I'll give you a chance to back out. Is anybody still not on for 100%? Oh, you guys all are on for 100%. I'm so proud of you. Thank you. Okay, let me get the timer ready. Genius is going to talk first. Savant's going to listen. I'll say switch and switch, switch and switch. Let me add one thing that people miss. Your job's to talk for the full 45 seconds. How long, everybody? 45. So if you have to make up something to talk about, make up something to talk about. and okay, genius, you're up, and go. Genius, you're up. Switch and switch, switch and switch. And to stop, please, and please thank your partner, and please thank your partner. High five him and say you're amazing. Who would like to share what either they shared or what their partner shared in a couple partner shares? We have a mic, so if you raise your hand, please raise a mic. And remember, fortune favors the bold. Who would like to share? You are a bold man.
So he didn't quite make it to 3, but he wants to be, the ability to learn to progress with his future is something that, is important for his learning, and to also to learn how to adapt to each situation and the progress through his life. So being able to adapt with certain situations that arise is what he kind of talked about, and the progression and learning how to progress in the future and stuff like that.
That's fabulous. What's your name, sir?
Uriah.
Uriah. Everybody give Uriah a round of applause. Thank you. And who else had their hand up? Back over there, Mr. Jeff.
Thanks. I wrote down really my first 2 is kind of in the same vein, I think. One is to learn to be a better listener with my wife, to know when to shut up and not give feedback. For any of you that know me, I think that is not a surprise. But then also as a better dad with 2 little girls, like how do I continue to learn to better support them, and so on and so forth. And then just to tie it back to what you said for the third one was just the overall awareness, myself, my home, my family, all of that. So
Thank you, Jeff. Let's give him a round of applause. Anybody else feel bold? Yes, thank you. And your name, please.
I'm Brittany.
Thank you, Brittany.
We kind of both discussed more like a family idea. Learning, you can also learn to teach as well, teaching younger generations and being one of the younger ones here. You do learn from people who have learned from their mistakes as well, and that's something that needs to be focused on, I think.
It's wonderful, Brittany. Thank you. And let's give her a round of applause. And for me, one of the things, there's another famous book by Simon Sinek called Find Your Why. And the saying is the bigger the why, the bigger the how. Say that with me, everybody. The bigger the why, the bigger the how. If you don't have a big enough reason why, you're never going to take the energy to do what you need to do. And oftentimes in life, it's easy to learn something that you're naturally interested in. But life sometimes requires you to learn something that you're not naturally interested in. And when you do get that subject, there's a couple tricks you can use. And one of the tricks is priming yourself before you have to learn that subject. Just as you just did, I primed you to find your why so you could listen a little bit more intently for the rest of class. And that's what I do with myself, is I prime myself. One of the pillars of self-esteem is purpose. What's the pillar, everybody? Purpose. And a person with more purpose feels better about themselves. And sometimes when you see somebody walk, they'll have purpose in their step. And sometimes you'll see people that just meandering and they don't have any purpose in their step. And when you have purpose in your life, you have a level of enthusiasm. And when you have a level of enthusiasm, you feel more alive. And for me, that's what I want to do, is I want to keep myself enthusiastic about living, and especially when I have to learn something that I'm not naturally enthusiastic about, I want to find enthusiasm. This job is the best job I could have on the planet Earth. This is what I love to do, and I knew as a young person, if I could do what I loved, I'd never go to work a single day. But after doing it for 14 years, I find myself lacking a little enthusiasm. Moment of truth, let's get real with yourself. I don't feel that excited today. What I'll do, I'm self-aware enough that I don't feel excited, and what I'll do is I'll generate enthusiasm. And one thing I'll say is all the enthusiasm I need is within me now. Say that with me. All the enthusiasm I need is within me now. And again, please. All the enthusiasm I need is within me now. And what that will do is it will help prime me so I can be more enthusiastic, so I can still have the ability to give 100%. Learning to learn is a critical skill. Emphasis on the word critical. Well, where did I put the emphasis on? Critical. This is my belief. It's critical in 2018 for everybody in this room to become a master learner. We're talking about your kids, we're talking about your life, we're talking about your career, we're talking about everything. The ability to take this skill very seriously. The ability to put the effort in. Part of change is courage. The more courage you have, the better you can face change. People oftentimes fear the unknown. Fear is the anticipation of pain. Fear is designed to keep us alive. That's one reason why we don't like to change. This all comes down to, for those of you that can't read the bottom of the board, it says it all comes down to survival. It all comes down to what, everybody? Survival. In other words, your brain's primary job is what? What do you think that is? Survival. That's its number one agenda, is to keep this vessel alive. So we have other human needs, but my number one job is to keep me alive. And we have many different identities. An example is I'm in my dad identity, I'm in my trainer identity, I'm in my have fun with everybody identity, I'm in my laziness identity, I'm in my discipline identity. So oftentimes we go into a different series of identities, and we almost always have a survival identity. Imagine that I had a couple bodyguards. Are my bodyguards going to look for what's right or look for what's wrong in the situation? They look for what's wrong in the situation. If you did 100 amazing things one day, and before you went to bed, would 100 amazing things and one bad thing, before you went to bed, what are you going to think about? The amazing thing or the bad thing? Because your brain's primary purpose is what? Survival. So it's more important to ponder the life challenges than the positivity for the sake of survival. But then this creates a habit. What does it create, everybody? A habit. It's a habit of thinking and how we think. And if you're not aware of it, you can't change it. But once you become aware of it, you have the ability to change it. One little micro hack I do before I go to bed is I ask myself this question: what did I do right today? I brushed my teeth. What else did I do right today? I flossed. What else did I do right today? I did my breathing exercise. What else did I do right today? I stretched. What else did I do right today? I did 50 burpees. Do you think I did 50 burpees this morning? I did 50 burpees. Okay, what else did I do right today? So what I'm doing is I'm acknowledging myself, positively cultivating the relationship with myself, because that's the most important relationship you have in your life, is the relationship with yourself. And the better you understand yourself, the better you're going to understand other people. And that's what I do instead of thinking about what's wrong. I cannot tell you the amount of people I train that can't go to sleep at night because they're too busy thinking about their life challenges. Can anybody relate to this? Yes. The path of least resistance. All together? The path of least resistance. Water follows it, electricity follows it, and so do human beings. The earth follows it. It's a very, very powerful force that's very, very real. And most people would rather do it the old way than the new way. There's a famous story that I know some of you have heard. It's called the ham story. And it's Thanksgiving dinner, and the daughter notices that the end of the ham is cut off every Thanksgiving. So she says, Mom, how come you cut the end off the ham? And Mom looks perplexed and says, I don't know, honey. That's how my mom did it. So Grandma's there, and she goes, Grandma, how come you cut the end off the ham? And she says, that's a great question. That's how my mom did it. She calls great-grandmother up in a different state and says, great-grandmother, and she goes, yes, honey. I'm good with voices. I tell myself that. and she goes, how come you cut the end off the ham? And she goes, what are you talking about, honey? And she said, well, I asked Mom why she cut the end of the ham off, and she said she did it because her mom did it, and she said she did it because you did it. How come you cut the end of the ham off? And she, no, okay, I mixed up. And she goes, honey, honey, that's the only way I could get it to fit in the little bitty oven that I had. Thanksgiving the next year, the little girl's kind of excited to see what happens this year with the ham. She goes downstairs and she sees the end of the ham's cut off again. And she said, Mom, Grandma, come here. Yes, honey. Where's that piece of meat? I want that piece of meat. Where is it? And they said, oh, honey, it's just nostalgia. We love Grandma so much. We're just going to keep on doing it. That's human nature. What kind of nature? Human nature. I was told by a friend of mine, Steve Meager, years ago, and certain things stick on our brains, and he said if there's a work associate that you don't like and that you have to go to a seminar for work, you're going to sit next to the person that you don't like rather than be in the unknown. Oftentimes people have relationships that aren't the best relationships, and they'd rather stay in the bad relationship than go into the unknown. There's a huge fear of uncertainty, and if you're not aware of it, you don't know that this is just this biological survival fear. Right now, boldness is key. Having the ability to be brave, having the ability to be empowered as a human being. One of the pillars of self-esteem is assertiveness. A person with a high level of assertiveness feels better about themselves. They say what they need to say when they need to say it. A person that doesn't feel good about themselves, they don't speak up and they never communicate. And they always wish I would have said this, but I don't know, I don't feel it, they're going to judge me, I can't say it. A person with a high level of self-esteem is going to say exactly what they need to say when they need to say it. A person with a high level of assertiveness is going to have the ability to take action where other people won't take action. I use boldness to prime myself to make sure I have self-esteem. Self-esteem, everybody, this is another truth. Everything always cycles. Everything goes up and down, and in life, we all have ups and downs. Well, with awareness, I want to be aware, self-aware that I'm in a down, so when I'm in a down, I need to put myself back together. It's up to me to put myself back together. Another pillar of self-esteem is responsibility. Was it, everybody? Responsibility. And a lot of people are victims and they blame, and the simple saying I heard years ago was, if it is to be, it's up to me. Say that with me. If it is to be, it's up to me. When I'm in the emotional funk, it's up to me. If I have help, that's nice. But it's up to me to figure out how to get myself up. And what I use is boldness. I am bold. Say that with me. I am bold. All the boldness I need is within me now. All together, all the boldness I need is within me now. Say it one more time like you mean it. All the boldness I need is within me now. And so what happens, this allows me to have the courage for change. When I have to go, I had fear to speak here, absolute fear. I told Feely, I'm scared. Feely says, that's good. Makes you more alive. And it's like, but I mean, we all have fear. It's by design. But courage is when you walk through the fear in spite of the fear and have that ability to act in spite of the fear and not be immobilized. I'll use things like all the boldness I need is within me now. All the enthusiasm I need is within me now because it puts these precepts in the top of my brain. So I have them for the next moment when I need it. The average human brain loses its attention 6 to 10 times per minute. How many times per minute? 6 to 10 times. They say the average human being looks at their cell phone 85 times a day. 85 times a day. ADD, as far as I'm concerned, is equal opportunity. We all have it at varying degrees because right now marketing has never been better. They know exactly what's on our feed. They know exactly what it's going to take to hook us. We want everything faster, so it's very difficult to keep our focus and our attention. Focus is a skill like learning that you can develop. And the better you can focus, the more efficient and effective you will be. There's a great saying, and that saying is there's nothing more important than what you have to do right now. And there's nobody more important than the person in front of you right now. My daughter, who's 11 years old, is one of the loves of my life. And my wife, it's not her biological daughter. And my wife says to me, honey, do you want to make a difference in this little girl's life? And I said, yeah, beautiful. And she says, well, what I want you to do then is I want you to be there with her. And she puts my hand on my leg. And she looks at me and she says, do you know what I mean? And I said, yeah, baby, you mean be present. And she said, yeah, that's right. Otherwise, she's going to spend her entire life looking for something, and she's not going to know what she looks for, what she's looking for. And this is what we're talking about, focusing on the things that are important to us, having the ability to be present. When you learn to learn, the better you focus, the better you'll learn. The less you focus, the less you'll learn. If you allow distractions, the information kind of falls out of you. And sometimes we have to cultivate this ability to focus. 75% of what people think, this is a generalization, is non-supportive, disempowering thoughts. They say the average child hears the words, you can't do this, 150,000 times by the time they're 18. We're thinking more I can't than I can versus I can. They say they hear it 5,000 times. Our thoughts create our emotions create our actions, and our actions create our results. Thoughts create emotions create actions, and actions create results. Say that with me, please. Thoughts create emotions create actions, and actions create results. And oftentimes what's in back of the result is the thinking and the emotions. Oftentimes we want to reverse engineer ourselves. Working with salespeople, what makes a successful salesperson better is they think differently. They think differently, and you can retrain yourself how to think. Thoughts become habits, emotions become habits, and actions become habits, and results become habits. The change has to happen internally before the change happens externally. Does that make a certain sort of sense? And having this self-awareness and this high level of mindfulness with what you're thinking will accelerate your ability to learn. Understanding that I'm not interested right now, I'm self-aware enough to proclaim that to myself. I'm here, there's nothing more important than what I have to do right now. I have to cultivate some curiosity so I can hold this information. When this person's communicating with me and I'm not naturally interested in them, this is a human being. Be kind, listen to them, be present with them. Same lesson for my wife, for people. Learning how to be a master of receiving the information. see here. Our thinking becomes a habit. Each day you think largely the same thoughts in slightly different orders. And we just think the same thoughts over and over again. And what's happening is our neural pathways, thinking is an electrochemical response, is following the path of least resistance in our brain. And whenever we have to do something new, we have a new boss or a new job, what we're doing is we're rewiring our brain. There's a book years ago that I read called 7 Triggers to Yes. And these are psychological triggers that people say yes to. And they did a study in this book, and they put brain imagery on this person's head, and they had this person dunk their arm into some ice water, and the pain center of their brain lit up. And then they asked them to do a problem, not a complicated problem, just a problem that caused them to think, and the same area of the brain lit up. What they deduced in this book is that it's painful to think. Say that with me. It's painful to think. And so it's much easier to follow the path of least resistance and just do it the old way. And whenever we learn something new, we go through a period of frustration. A period of what? Frustration. When we take over these dealerships, these people are scared to death because there's change coming their way. And I was in Buffalo, New York a couple months ago, and while I was there, I explained to the sales staff on the showroom floor that whenever you go through change, there's always going to be a period of frustration. And I said to them, I accept frustration. And I asked them to say that with me. Say that with me, everybody. I accept frustration. And one more time all together. I accept frustration. One more time all together. I accept frustration. Thank you. And I said, the mere fact that you're accepting it is going to make it easier. Think about that. Sometimes people go home and I'm so frustrated. They're putting all this new stuff on me. I'm so stressed. I don't want to do it, but the brain wants to follow the old pathway. But when you accept it, all of a sudden you're self-aware to know what's going on, and you have the ability to change it. And when you're aware of it and you embrace it, embrace everything. Say that with me. Embrace everything. What happens is you move through it quicker. There's another simple saying, is what you resist persists. Say that with me. What you resist persists. All together, please. What you resist persists. And if you're in a traffic jam and you're upset because you have to be somewhere, you're resisting it so it persists. If you're intolerant of a human being and you're resisting it, it's going to persist. When you're in frustration because of change and you're resisting it, I don't want to change, why can't I do it the whole way? It's going to persist. When you have the ability to accept it, you move through it. If you don't accept it, you don't move through it. And this is a basic tenet of having the ability to learn. Whenever you're rewiring your brain, you're making new neural pathways in your brain, you're bedding in new data in there. And oftentimes it takes a bit of repetition. What does it take? Repetition. Another simple saying is repetition is the mother of skill and success. It's having the ability to repeat something over and over again. There's a simple formula, and the formula is 10, 24/7. Say that with me. 10, 24/7. And if you review something for 10 minutes every 24 hours for 7 days in a row, you're going to hold 80% of the information. Whenever you learn something new, you have the discipline to review it for 10 minutes the next morning, 10 minutes the next morning, 10 minutes the next morning, for 7 days in a row. You're going to hold 80% of that data. This is learning to learn. This is the level of efficiency. This is the level of effectiveness. And you pay attention to the nuggets that you need. The first time is the worst time. Say that with me. The first time is the worst time. Okay, it's time for me to give you a moment of truth. My wife is so sweet and kind that I practiced this last night, and she had to listen to it. The wives don't like to be taught by their husbands, if you don't know that. So she has to pretend like she's interested. And I timed it at perfect hour. Well, I have like 6 pages to go here, and we're done in a couple of minutes. Maybe there will be a part 2. It's one of the things, what I hope you got from this moment is that learning is a skill and you can get good at it. And that it's a skill that's going to make change easier in your life. And when I say unprecedented, I mean it literally. We're having unprecedented change on the planet, and the better you do with change, the better you'll do in life. I have a moment, if anybody has any questions for me, just like to leave the floor open if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask.
I have a question. So you said the weakest link in your learning change. Sorry, I forgot. So you were saying something about the weakest link in your learning chain is what you need to work on. So what are some examples of that?
One of the things is, thank you, great question. Let's give her a round of applause, thank you. What is the weakest link in my learning chain? And people have limiting beliefs. And a common one is, I'm not good with names. And I would ask, salespeople regularly say that, I'm not good with names. And I know you've heard somebody say this before, if not yourself. And then I ask them, how many books have you read on remembering names? And what will the common person say? None. How many YouTube clips have you watched on remembering names? What are they going to say? None. There's a famous book in the 1920s called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And he said the sweetest word in any human being's vocabulary is their name. When you say their name, it just rings the bell. I'm worthy enough. There's a huge need for human beings to be significant. Why, as a professional salesperson, would you not master names? And they come up with a simple, crude, incredibly weak justification. That's just who I am. And for me, that's called a limiting belief. And people have limiting beliefs in the relationship to their ability to learn, limiting beliefs in their memory, limiting beliefs that whether I'm not good at math, I'm not good at singing, I'm not good at role playing, I don't like being filmed, I don't like this. And that's a belief that occurred based upon you putting a perception on an experience. The saying is, if you want to fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. You get to keep that limitation. And in order to become an accelerated learning, you have to let go of these limitations. For me, the biggest sales pitch you will ever put on anybody or anything is on yourself. And for me, sometimes I have to unsell myself on who I think I am. Because the rigid mind doesn't learn as well as the flexible mind. Does that make a certain sort of common sense? And the more flexible you are, the better you're going to learn. We got time for one more question. Yeah.
You mentioned a lot of books. If you had maybe a top 3, what would your top 3 that you might recommend?
Great question, thank you. And in relationship to learning to learn, it's almost like when I pull out my phone and pull out Audible. One's called The Art of Learning by a man named Josh Waitzkins. And he's a savant chess player. And he was the guy that they wrote the book Searching for Bobby Fischer about. Fabulous book. And there's another one called Accelerated Memory. And what I do is I listen to Audible because that's a learning hack. I can just listen to it in my car. I can listen to it anywhere. And even like SoundView on our learning library has fabulous books and they're corporate summaries of books. And then what I do is I pick the book based upon the amount of stars it has and the amount of people that reviewed it. This one's called Unlimited Memory by Grandmaster Kevin Horsley. I thought it was fabulous. There's another great book called Learn or Die. It's about corporate learning and being a corporate learner. And those are the ones that come to the top of my mind. But what I intended on doing is giving Nicole a list. So the people that accepted, she could send you a list of some of my top ideas. Great question, though, and thank you for that. And it looks like we're 2 minutes. Anybody have one last question? Okay, I'd like to leave you with this. For me, my perspective is just that. It's my perspective. And I look at the world, and I choose to look for the beauty as opposed for the challenges. And I ask myself, what can I do for 7.25 billion people? What can I do for Lithia? What can I do for my family? And for me, the most important thing I can do is to make myself healthy. The healthier I am, the healthier my family is. The healthier I am, the healthier Lithia is. The healthier I am, the healthier the planet is. And that's why I can't take myself too seriously and get over-identified, and I have to stay humble and keep on learning. And just like my father, when he was in his 40s, and he shared with me the lessons of Norman Vincent Peale, or the S seminars, the insight. My father, while he was going through his life transformation, absolutely changed my life 100%. He changed the time and location of my gravestone by his example. And I maintain that the best teaching you ever do will be by your example, because your actions speak so much louder than your words. Thank you so much for coming. I look forward to seeing you. Have a great rest of your day.